Before we get into the show, there is a way that you can help support the show. A very easy way, in fact.
If you go to our website, eatlunchandboardgame.com, click on the Get the Games tab. There we have affiliate links to many of the games and books we have talked about. If you're interested in purchasing any, by clicking on the link, a small portion of your purchase will go to us.
But we promise to use the money wisely by buying more games to review.
We take our jobs very seriously.
Now on with this great episode.
In this episode, I am joined by Brian Reynolds, one of the founders of thebridgeteachers.com. We dive into his secret weapon for two truths and a lie, the art of playing Monopoly by the rules, and the challenge of teaching bridge to a 6-year-old. And that is just the beginning. Brian also shares an online comic recommendation and a book that is now on my must-read list. Plus, his wife makes a surprise appearance as she could hear us through the wall and couldn't resist chiming in to keep him honest. All this and more. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins, and joining me today is Brian Reynolds, who is a self-proclaimed bridge enthusiast. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So bridge is one of the few card games that I really don't know how to play. I've downloaded the app. I've tried to learn. I know it's a trick-taking game, and that's about it. And I remember growing up, didn't they used to have like the puzzles in like the Sunday Times about the different hands?
Yeah, I don't know, there might still be bridge columns once a week, but maybe they got rid of them. But if they got rid of them, it was in the last 5 years or 10 years or something like that. It was, for a while, it was the most popular game in the world. Game, not card game, game. And then, time caught up to it, bad marketing caught up to it, a sense of entitlement caught up to it. Everyone was like, oh, this is going to be popular forever. And, there's just so many more other avenues now for entertainment that it's really dying out, unfortunately. That's why I'm here. I'm the prophet in the wilderness saying you should try bridge.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So talk about your website.
So it's thebridgeteachers.com. We're trying to solve the problem that you yourself found, which is I want to learn this game, but how do I even get started? My wife Samantha has recorded over 450 hours of videos and counting. She's in the other room right now editing some more. She's just always editing. And the idea is we specialize in people who've never touched a deck of cards before. Certainly people who've never played bridge before. And when we first learned, there was nothing like this. All the books were towards, advanced players. So what we're trying to do is, you've never played before. What do I do? Well, you come to our YouTube channel, you check us out. Then you come to our website, thebridgeteachers.com, and we guide you through everything from how to play to basic language and basic problem solving to take it as far as you want to go.
Awesome. Yeah, I have so many. I'm looking at my little bookshelf here of so many different things of how to play different card games, and bridge is always in there. And I always for some reason, I think it's so much more complicated than it probably really is.
It definitely is. And the reason why is because the bridge world tends to be kind of insular. Like if you know how to play, that's how people talk to you. So when you're just getting started, you don't really, there's sort of like a ceiling in your way or a barrier in your way. It's a good example to me is like Settlers of Catan, right? Like I have only played once. I was at a party and a friend of mine who's a professional bridge player says, hey, come play Settlers of Catan. She loves it. And I said, okay, great. I don't know how to play. And she sat me down. She told me 3 things to look for. And I said, okay, great. And I just did those 3 things. I don't know how I did. I don't know if I was any good, but I had fun and I enjoyed the game rather than okay, here's 17 things, and don't forget you can win by doing this, and all these win conditions and things like that. And I think that with bridge, what we try to do is we try to just the mechanics first, right? Can you play a hand of bridge and follow all the rules? Well, what about all these strategies? Oh, well, we can talk about those, but let's just get the mechanics down. When you feel like you can play, and a hand of bridge takes about 7 to 10 minutes tops, right? So if you can get through 7 minutes of playing a hand of bridge, then we can start talking about, okay, here's how you tell your partner what you have, and they tell you what you have, and here's a goal you're aiming for in terms of the bidding and all that stuff, and here's a cute little puzzle in the play of the hand that you can solve. But if you start with, open up a bridge book and all of a sudden they're talking about, relay systems and, queen asks after 1430 key card responses, of course you're going to feel like, oh, well, this game's way too complicated.
Yeah, maybe that's just it. I mean, so it's funny. I play euchre.
Okay, great.
Which is that's my family's card game. I grew up playing euchre, and then for a long time, I was the one that had to teach all my cousins how to play euchre.
Sure.
And I love euchre, but even that one, there's a lot of, like you said, can you get through a hand? Can you understand what to do? I mean, the hardest thing in euchre to tell anybody is, okay, so the highest value is the jack of whatever color. Not suit. Right. We'll get there in a second. But whatever color, those jacks are 1 and 2, left and right bower. Why are they called bowers? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Because in 1468 there was a king in Belgium.
Yeah, exactly. And so I always feel like, hearts and spades and euchre all feel the same to me, and then bridge is like completely foreign territory, and I'm like,
oh great, you play spades?
I try.
Okay, great. I'll teach you bridge in 30 seconds. You ready? So bridge is spades, except during the auction you also determine the trump suit.
Oh.
That's it. There you go. And there's also a dummy in the play of the hand, so the play of the hand is slightly different, but spades is bridge. I'm sorry, bridge is spades, except number one, the auction can go on for as long as many rounds as possible. And you're not only determining the target goals of how many tricks you want to take, but you're also determining a trump suit or lack thereof. That's it. So if you've played spades, you've basically played what I would think of as like a training wheels version of bridge.
Yeah, I got taught spades at a chess tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son plays chess, and then some of his friends, they're twin girls, they play spades, and that takes 4 players, so they knew how to play, and their mom, so they taught me to have 4 so that we could play spades at a chess tournament. So I learned how to play spades that way. I got the app on my phone to kind of help figure out the bidding process and when is good, when is bad, when to say, I can get 0, watch this. But yeah, so maybe I did have a bridge app on my phone for a while. I don't know if I still do or not, but I'll have to get back into it perhaps.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and like you said, it's one of those things where people think about it and they think, oh, that's like this really complicated game. And I think of it like anything else, right? Like I'm really into bowling. By the way, I St. Louis, bowling capital of the world. I don't know if it still is, but when I was there, it was the bowling capital of the world, right? And you can pick up a bowling ball and throw it and watch the pins go crash and be super happy. Or you can talk about cover stocks and weight blocks and drilling patterns and oil patterns and yada, 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 right? So it's just like anything else. Like, let's start by having fun. Like the last thing you want to do when you introduce someone to a game you love, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a card game or chess or my family and I played some really cool cooperative game where you were like trying to build a castle before you got overrun by the horde or something like that. And it was super fun. Us all trying to, construct this castle before we were destroyed. We had fun. So the last thing you want to do when you sit somebody down with a game you enjoy is for them to go, oh gosh, this is so hard, right? You
right.
You want the experience to be a positive one because it's positive for you.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's all about the fun. It's all about the positive. Because And that's what, and so my son and I play a lot of board games. And when we decide to take one to friends, family, whatever, we want to take a fun one and one that we feel like we can teach you and you can enjoy it even as a beginner and not have to dig so deep and know all these, like you're saying, all these fancy terms. Like you just need to sit down and play it. And then once you understand it, then add more to it. And that's, that's the joy of some of these modern board games, is that there is more you can add to them. You just got to learn the basics. That's kind of like you're saying with bridge, is just learn how to play a hand and then go from there.
Right. And especially when you're a game player, you start to relate everything to everything else. So I had someone who challenged me to get into Teamfight Tactics. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. It's an auto battler. Basically, you buy units, you put them on a board. It's a 8-player, knockout type of situation. And I said, okay. So, I checked it out, and I started relating everything to all the other games I played. Resource management versus, okay, this is the way these structures work. And once you do that, it's super fun. And I think that's why if you play games, you play all games. you try all games. It's like, I'll try anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to be awesome.
Right.
You never know what's going to grab you and be like your next favorite game.
Yeah. I mean, there's a game called Exploding Kittens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That company came out of nowhere, man.
Well, I'd been familiar with the Oatmeal. I don't know if you're familiar with the comic.
Yep.
But then all of a sudden they were making games, and I was like, what is this? This is interesting. Yeah.
That's crazy. So how did you get into games?
A girl was involved.
Oh,
I was working in a student union across from a dorm. I was in this little tiny convenience store. It was about the size of a maintenance closet. And this girl walked into my store, and we hit it off, and we became friends. About a year later, I asked her out on a date, and she said, "Well, I'll go on a date with you, but you got to learn to play bridge." And my exact thought was, well, how hard can that be? I didn't say that out loud, luckily. And there weren't any resources. This is back before I even had an email address, didn't have a cell phone, all that stuff. And like you said, all the books were just like, what is this language? It was like trying to learn physics and reading, Italian textbooks. It was crazy. So then, we continued to date, and we continued to play bridge together, just with friends, teacher friends, try and play. And then I broke my leg. I was on a national tour of Romeo and Juliet, and I fractured my leg in the middle of a sword fight. I always win 3 truths and a lie, or 2 truths and a lie. Cause my 3 are, I've been fully engulfed in flame. I broke my leg in a sword fight, and I fell off a 40-foot scaffolding. So yeah, guess which one of those is the lie. Good luck. But anyway,
go with the scaffolding.
You're right. It was only 30 feet. It wasn't 40 feet. So, but so I couldn't walk for 6 months. And there was a brand new website called OK Bridge that you could play online for, it was minimal amount a month. And I played 8 hours a day because there was nothing else to do. I just played bridge all day, every day. And she found by the way, spoiler alert, I'm still married to that girl.
I figured.
33 years later. Going on 34 years now. But yeah, she found a bridge club that was giving free lessons. We went and we started learning the basics. And that's when the game got fun for me, was when I felt like I had a modicum of idea of what I was doing. And more importantly, I had a structure. I had a foundation to build into understanding. It wasn't just like, bumping against walls. It wasn't a black box experiment where I was just shooting things in and watching it ping out the other side and trying to figure out the shape inside, right? I was like, like people were telling me, oh, look how this works. And I'd be like, oh, cool. And we didn't have a formal teacher, but I would just like, there's nothing game players love more than giving advice to other game players about what they should have done better, right? So I just...
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm just thinking about some of my friends.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't imagine what your son... I used to play chess when I was a kid. I was pretty good for my age. Yeah, there's nothing quite like chess postmortems.
Yeah,
like
I'm terrible at chess. So like
Oh, yeah?
He comes back out and he shows me, he's like, this is what I did. And then I did that. And I'm like, sounds awful. And he's like, no, that's how I won. I'm like, I mean, yeah, sounds great.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. But chess is another good example. When I was growing up, I was part of a chess program at my junior high school. I think won the national championship my 7th grade, whatever. Anyway, point is we had a chess coach. It was the whole thing. But trying to like learn chess on your own, there's books and things, but now it's like YouTube. I mean, there's a million different ways to learn chess, and there's a huge resurgence in chess because of things like Queen's Gambit and things like that. Chess.com is huge.
Yep.
And there's no reason to me why bridge couldn't be the same thing. The greatest bridge player ever, Bob Hammond, talks a lot about how when he went to UCLA as a freshman, he had already been a backgammon player and he'd been a chess player and he'd been all these other things. Then he found bridge. And, I can't count how many world championships the guy has won. I think it's like over 20, whatever. Yeah.
That's a long time to be the best.
Yeah, he's been the best for like 6 decades. I just saw him actually in November. He's still playing at the Nationals. I think he's in his late 80s now, and still the sharpest mind in the room. That dude is scary good. Like he's like Jordan plus LeBron plus Tiger Woods plus Jack Palmer plus Tom Brady all rolled into one. Like but it's bridge, so he's not on the cover of the Wheaties box. He should be, but
well, that you don't have to worry about. Tom Brady and all those guys, they got old, and like those sports take a lot of physicality, whereas bridge, you just got to keep your mind sharp.
Yeah. And that's what I love about bridge is it does keep your mind sharp. There's research that has shown that bridge players suffer 75% less dementia and Alzheimer's than general population. So it's like a gym for your brain. And I think any sort of game playing probably does that. I'm not a neuroscientist, but
I mean,
really
that's a lot of schooling. I don't want to do that.
That is a lot of schooling. I do love the study of neuroscience. I've got a couple of neuroscience textbooks on my bookshelf over here, but just because I love to understand how we learn. To me, how we learn is a game, right? Can we gamify learning? It's like, okay, it takes 10,000 hours to learn something. Okay, can I cut it down to 9? Can I cut it down to 7? Can I cut it down to 5? Like, what can we do? How can we gamify this?
So you mentioned backgammon, which is another game that has kind of faded into obscurity, which is too bad because I got into backgammon and cribbage are like 2 games that my son and I just kind of got into. And man, both of those are fantastic 2-player games.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest problem for backgammon is that the doubling cube is not correctly understood.
Right.
I've noticed that a lot of times when we teach beginners, we don't explain the doubling cube, right? The doubling cube is something that we save for later. And it is actually, I think it is the mechanism that changes backgammon from just pure sort of like random number generator to more skill based. Because if you can just keep fighting from a lost position, right, then variance has a much higher influence on the outcome of a backgammon game. But if you are forced by an opponent in a superior position to try to calculate your odds of a comeback by them doubling you, now you're much more into the skill-based area. And I think that when it comes to bridge, right, we try to teach you all of the rules. As difficult as that may be, we try to teach. Samantha has a video, Learn Bridge in 10 minutes. Because I think if you take any component of it out, now you're not going to be building a foundation. So I think if backgammon, like I didn't learn about I used to play backgammon with my family all the time. I learned about the doubling cube until I was an adult. Like, oh, what is this? Oh, don't worry about it. It's like, no, that's the game. The doubling cube is the game.
No, I read about how like the doubling cube like changed the game, and you're right. And that the first set that I bought didn't even have a doubling cube in it.
Right.
It was a Pressman edition that I found for like $5 at a thrift shop, unopened. I'm like, wow, cool. And then like we played it, and then I found this other version at like Goodwill for like $3 that had a doubling cube, and then I'm like, what's the doubling cube? I'm like, whoa. It changes everything. For sure.
It's one of those things where when people talk about Monopoly, right? It's like, oh, what a terrible game. It's just so random. It's just this. And my question is always the same is, do you play by the rules?
The answer is always no. Nobody does the auction part.
Right. Nobody. There's always house rules, right? Oh, we don't like that rule, so we do. And by the way, if you want to win Monopoly, just never buy hotels. Never.
Right. Always build the 4 houses.
Always build the 4 houses and make everyone play by the rules. Yeah. And you'll win.
90 minutes.
Yeah. So it's like, that's the thing is it's like anything else. I'm learning singing right now. I've always wanted to be a good singer. And the amount of skill that goes into singing is insane. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed by it, right? So it's like one step at a time, try to make that first step as correct as possible so you can build a foundation for down the road.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting because being in the board game hobby, it's interesting how it's hard to believe that Catan is going to be 30 years old this year. And I got into it. Yeah, right. That's nuts. And I got into it over 10 years ago. And that was my gateway game. And now Catan is there's so many better games to use as a gateway game that you can kind of build towards. And then I read a book and interviewed the author about how some board games now are teaching you how to play the game through different like you play this version of the game, then you add this component and play the game, then you add this component and you play the game 4 or 5 times. Now you're playing the whole game as it was meant to be. But if you just sat down, try to just sit down and say, I'm going to play this game in its full glory right out of the gate, you'd be lost. And it's interesting because like I feel like there's a bunch of card games that are very simple, but a lot of them are, even like Go Fish, what a simple little game, but yet think about what that teaches you. It teaches you counting the cards that are in play, keeping track of who's got what. Like there's a lot of benefits to Go Fish. Now, as a 40-year-old man, am I going to sit down and play Go Fish with my other 40-year-old friends? Absolutely not. But will I sit down and play with my 6-year-old? Absolutely, because it's teaching her things that she, concepts that, because if I try to sit down and just teach my 6-year-old how to play bridge, go right over her head because she doesn't even understand cards.
I disagree.
You disagree?
Youngest I've ever taught was 6. Youngest I ever taught was 6. Has she played War?
Oh yeah,
Bridge is War, just with 4 people instead of 2.
So War, let's flip over the top. The highest number wins.
Yeah. That's That's bridge. There you go. That's bridge. No, seriously, I was on a trip, and the family I was with said, we want to learn to play bridge. And I said, okay. And they had a 6-year-old girl, and 8-year-old boy. So it was mom, dad, and these 2 kids. They said, we want to learn to play bridge. I said, great. And they said, okay, kids, we're gonna go play bridge. I'll see you later. And I said, no.
Oh, you can have a whole game.
That's not the deal. The deal is I teach, and they're like, oh, are they old enough? I'm like, yes, they're old enough. They're absolutely old enough. There's a kid named, well, he's not a kid now, he's an adult, but there was this guy named Tal Shaked. Sorry, Tal, if I'm mispronouncing your name. I don't know if you know who Tal Shaked is. So I met Tal when he was 4. I played him at a chess tournament. I was probably 12 or 13. And I cleaned Tal's clock. Cleaned it. Just wiped him off the board. Just smashed that little 4-year-old kid in the face. And about 3 months later, I played him again, and I beat him pretty. I beat him. About 3 months after that, played him to a draw. About 3 months after that, he beat the ever-loving tar out of me. About 3 years after that, he was winning like championships. And he's actually the kid that I think was better than Bobby Waitskin, who was searching for Bobby Fischer. I think Tal was actually a better player. I'm really dating myself right now. But in the chess world, those 2 kids were the prodigies, right? And Tal, I mean, look at Magnus Carlsen. When did Magnus Carlsen start playing chess? It's like, you can't tell me that chess is less complicated than bridge.
I don't think chess, I can make the pieces move.
Great.
I understand how they move.
Great.
Setting people up and thinking turns in advance is just not my specialty. Right.
And that's the thing about bridge is the skill base of bridge is not necessarily, 12 moves of algorithms ahead. It's Samantha and I used to play in a lot of tournaments, and there was a run where we bumped into the MIT bridge team for 2 solid years, and we'd play them in matches. So a match would be 24 boards, and we'd play the MIT team, and we'd beat them every time. And they were super confused. They're because these people know more about math than I'll ever understand, right?
Absolutely.
And how are we losing to these people? This actor and his wife, how are we losing? Because bridge is ultimately a game of language and logic. It's not necessarily a huge math game. It can be, but you don't have to be. So, but yeah, 6. I'll teach a 6-year-old right now.
Well, she's downstairs. Otherwise, I'd call her up. They're home from school today because it's too cold.
Oh, because it's too cold. Yeah. It's amazing. And I got to tell you, here's the other thing is, going back to games and the value of games, kids learn so much faster than adults because they don't have any attachment to doing things well.
Right.
We get older and we're like, oh, it sucks to be bad at something, or it's, I don't like the feeling of, I messed up or whatever. And kids will just throw themselves in and screw things up and try things, and they iterate so fast.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there was a book. I was trying to find it. It's called Your Move by Joan Moriarty.
Okay.
Where she talks about how board games are like a safe place because it's a safe place for people to mess up and to learn and to be okay with messing up and not being your best all the time. And
yeah.
And it was it was a good book. I enjoyed it. Joan's a great person. But yeah, you're right though. Kids they're also not trying to overthink it. Where you go play with some other people and you play a game, they're trying so desperately to put it into a context of a different game that's so perfect example. We love my gaming group. We love the game Acquire. I talk about Acquire all the time. It's one of my all-time favorite games by Sid Saxon. It's literally 60 years old. The
Right?
60th anniversary came out this year. I bought it because I had to have it. But then this other game called Big Boss came out last year, or is a reprint of a game by a designer that I also really like, and it was like his version or his take on the game Acquire, and it's called Big Boss. And so my friends and I played it, but we were playing it with the mindset of Acquire, and we're like, just like we're doing terribly. And then all of a sudden I'm like, this isn't Acquire. We have to like, we can't play it like it's Acquire. It's a whole different game.
Totally.
And once we figured that out, like the first game we played, man, we ruined the game because we're like, this game, we totally messed it up because we were like, in Acquire, that the whole, by the title, is you're trying to acquire smaller companies and absorb them, but then those companies can come back out. Well, in Big Boss, once a company's taken over, it's out of the game. So we ended up with like very few companies very early on because we were just so used to that whole, taking it over. But that's not Big Boss. That's not Big Boss at all. And we're like, oh, but with kids, they just want to learn a new game, and you can teach them a new game and they're not trying. Yeah, they'll piece it together into another game, but they're not going to have that like that rooted in.
Right. If your son took up Go, for instance, he might unconsciously connect it to chess, but he wouldn't have the same sort of fossilized experience, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Fossilized experience is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But there are games that are like chess variants. We have a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
And man, as soon as he can equate that to chess and apply chess strategies to a game that is basically a different version of chess, I'm toast. I got about, what's that one we have? Gambit of Kings is basically chess.
Okay.
It's a very fun game because all the pieces move differently than chess. So they don't have the same patterns of movement. But once he figured out, if I move it like this kind of it's over. And then you have like Onitama is another one. That's another great 2-player chess-like game. And I can stand, usually when I play Onitama, we're neutral for a long time. Just kind of moving. And then all of a sudden he's like, attack, game over. And I'm like, man, I thought I had that, but so maybe, with bridge now that I play spades and I play euchre, I feel like maybe bridge is something I could go back to.
Yeah. And what I offer this to you, obviously, and I also offer this to anyone who's listening. If you want to try bridge and you find yourself like stuck or you hit an obstacle of some sort, I literally just did a video. We're going to upload it to our YouTube channel on how to play bridge if you can't use a mouse. I was challenged by someone to, what about people with physical disabilities who literally can't use a mouse? Can they still play bridge? And using voice control on the Mac, there's a comparable program on the PC in the operating software. I don't remember the name of it, voice activation or something like that. But you can literally just call out numbers that are on your screen and it'll click that area of the screen as your mouse. So if all you have is your voice, you can play bridge. And that would go for any game. You can basically interact with your computer using nothing but your voice. But my point is, if you hit an obstacle, please reach out to me, Brian at thebridgeteachers.com or Samantha at thebridgeteachers.com, and say, hey, you told me that I could learn to play bridge, but I've hit this snag. I don't understand this. And I'll be like, okay, cool. Well, here's how you can solve that problem.
So have you written a book or anything?
Samantha's written 2. Actually, Samantha's written a lot more than 2, but she's got 2 books. I don't know if the second one's up on Amazon yet. Oh my God, I'm so bad. She's written 2 books.
We won't tell her that you don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't. Don't tell her. Don't tell her. Listen, if the longer you talk to me, the more you'll realize that I am not the brains of the operation. I married the smartest person I've ever met. But yeah, she's written books on bidding. for beginners, for people who've never played before, which I think is a huge distinction. There's really not, I don't know of any other books that start with the idea that you've never played bridge before. They all start with the idea that you at least know how to play. Now her books are on bidding, so they probably assume you know the rules, but beyond that, they don't assume anything. They assume you don't have a language, you don't know what any of the words mean, and that's on the bidding phase. And then on the play phase, she hasn't written any books on the play of the hand. The reason for that is because, well, she has, but she hasn't. The reason for that is because playing the hand hasn't changed in 500 years, and there's a lot of good books on that. Bridge for Dummies has a great section.
I rented that from the library.
It's a great, so Eddie Cantor, who lives in Santa Monica, I've gotten to meet him a bunch of times. Actually a champion ping pong player back in the day. Samantha's literally texting me, listening to me talk. I did actually write a book on play of the hand. It was one of the most popular. Hold on a second. Is it on Amazon? Okay, not yet. Okay, cool. So coming soon. Coming soon. But it's so funny. I've got you up on my screen, and then I've got I can just see like the one line of text on my screen, and it's just like Samantha texting me. You're getting it wrong. You're getting it wrong. I'm like, I know I'm getting it wrong. But yeah, there's a lot of good books on play. And there's a lot of good books on bidding too, once you have more an intermediate understanding or advanced understanding. But yeah, reach out to us, email us, say, hey, here's where I've hit. Here's the snag I've hit. And we're happy to guide you through to the next step.
Cool. So one of the other questions I like to ask people is when you do play a game with colors, what color do you like to play as?
Purple.
Purple?
Purple's my favorite color.
Starting to become a lot more prevalent in games, I can tell you that.
Yeah. For years, I settled for blue. And then I just realized I got to live my best life, man. I got to live my truth. Blue's fine. I mean, as you can tell from my wall behind me, blue's fine. But man, purple. Give me purple every day.
There you go. And what about Kickstarter? Have you ever dabbled with Kickstarter?
We have not. We self-publish our books. We've got our website. If we ever get like a project that needs that sort of, push, we will probably will. But right now, not, crowdfunding is not something that is in our pipeline.
Have you ever backed a Kickstarter?
Oh yeah, I've probably backed dozens. Oh my God, including Exploding Kittens. I think it was like Oatmeal's making a board. It was kind of a card game.
It was a card game. Yeah.
Yeah, card game. It's like, okay, let's go. Oh, and Order of the Stick. Are you familiar with Order of the Stick?
No. Oh
my God. Okay, so Order of the Stick is a webcomic. It's been going on for like 10 years or something like that now. It's amazing. It's literally stick figures. It's like a D&D webcomic. And he literally is drawing stick figures, which is funny because the art is actually really, really good. So he obviously could do like different art, but he has this whole aesthetic. I'm pretty sure it's a he. I'm sorry if I'm misgendering the author, but yeah, he came up with a board game, and I backed it on the Kickstarter. And it was fun. It was great. It's in my closet. Yeah.
Order of the Stick. There you go. Great hidden gem.
Oh yeah. If you haven't read it, whew, I envy you. I actually was like planning on like starting to reread it again from the first panel.
Oh man. Order of the Stick. There it is. It's on BGG, so it's an official game.
There you go.
Oh man. 2006.
Yeah. And it's really fun. So my wife Samantha and I both are writers. I actually had my first feature film. We're currently in talks for distribution for my first feature film that we filmed in a couple of years ago. And I was talking to her once. We were talking about redemption arcs, the trope of a redemption arc inside of art and writing, movies, whatever. And I said, well, actually, there's this amazing redemption arc inside of Order of the Stick. And she says, really? I'm like, yeah. I said, I'd love for you to read it. And she's like, well, first of all, she doesn't really like animated stuff. I said, that's fine. Or graphic novels or anything like that. And also, I don't want to like click that much on my computer. I'm like, well, lucky for you, I backed a Kickstarter for him to publish all the books in full color. So I have all the, I don't have all of them now because he's written a lot since then, but luckily I have all the books. I just want you to read up to this book right here. And she read it. She's like, that's a really good redemption arc. So his storytelling is excellent. Very, very good. But
guess I'll be digging into this.
Oh man. One thing I find frustrating about the current state of art is that there's so much of it that it's really, really hard to get any sort of traction for things that you think are good. Right? Like, I'm sure there's some board game that you have or some experience you've had that you're like, I wish everyone in the world would try this game. And whether it's a movie or a book, there's an amazing, beautiful, gorgeous book called The Night Circus by Aaron Morgenstern. And it was popular, but not, I mean, it's, if you like fantasy at all, if you like, sort of modern fantasy at all, it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. So, we're always trying to grab somebody by the lapels and go, listen, you have to try this thing. You got to try this thing. Please try this thing. So.
No, you're 100% right. That's exactly that's what everybody's always doing. Oh, you like board games? You got to try this one. You got to try this one. Like, I play hundreds and hundreds of games. Like, this one is what I'm telling you. You should definitely give it a shot.
Yeah. Yeah. When I used to go to, luckily bookstores are coming back, but when I used to go to bookstores, I would literally just, if someone was in anywhere close to a section I was in, I would go up to them and say, if you could pick one book that I haven't read and I will buy it right now and I will start reading it today, what book would you pick? And I would just buy whatever they told me to. And probably like half the time I was like, this isn't my cup of tea. And half the time I'd be like, this is okay. And like that one book out of 10 or that one book out of 20, it'd be like,
yeah.
The Night Circus was actually that book. One of those books was, someone's like, The Night Circus. I'm like, what is that? I don't know. And they said, it's right here. They like literally like reached over and pulled it off the shelf. They said, it's right here. I said, I'm going to read this today. And I did. I read the whole thing in one day. I couldn't put it down. It was that good. So
awesome.
Yeah.
But look into that one too. I love to read. Right now I'm in the middle of a book 2 of a trilogy.
Which trilogy?
It's the Broken Blade trilogy.
By whom?
My Corland. The
Okay.
first one's called 5 Broken Blades. The second one, the one I'm reading right now, is called 4 Ruined Realms. And book 3 is not out yet, so I'm trying to get through book 2 before book 3 comes out.
Gotcha.
But it's one of those ones that, like you're saying, like it is such a good book. It's very fun, very twisty.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it. So
Great.
I'm like, this is, and so when people say you can't judge a book by the cover, that is not true. I bought 5 Broken Blades because of the cover.
If that wasn't true, publishing companies wouldn't pay artists.
Yeah, no kidding.
They would just slap literally like Arial font with the title and the author's name. They certainly wouldn't put full color. That stuff's expensive.
Oh yeah, no kidding. But so yeah, I bought this book. It was just sitting at Costco and it had a cool cover and I'm like, well, I'll buy this. And so I bought it and I read it and I loved it. And then the second book just came out and I'm reading that one right now. So
nice.
But yeah, it's absolutely, I like to read. I read a lot. So I put Night Circus on my list to get around to.
Nice.
So I want to thank you for being on the show today. And then if anybody want to get a hold of you, you've said it before, but it's Brian at
thebridgeteachers.com, or just swing by our website, thebridgeteachers.com, and anywhere on the internet, YouTube, whatever, Facebook, thebridgeteachers.com will find us.
Excellent. And as usual, you can reach out to me at facebook.com/eatlunchandboardgame. Our website's eatlunchandboardgame.com, and you can always reach me at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com. And remember, board games build bridges. When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.